It's Friday, March 19, and welcome to Tech Thoughts. Today we will continue to discuss the everlasting interest rate worries, and also have some product news from YouTube, and we will mix that with some Airbnb news. Inge, what's the latest on the market?
It's interesting you say the latest, because same, I would say. Interest rates worries. The market is really correlating with interest rates, especially the tech side of the market. And now we've seen Brazil increasing rates. We have heard Norway starting to think about increasing rates, and probably will be the first Western European country to increase rates. So the market is definitely worried about the interest rates and so on. But I'm not that worried in the long run about it. I think we will see some more volatility in the short run, but in the long run, I think we'll get some stabilization. And the key thing to focus, I think, is more the growth of the tech industry going forward, and especially from Q2 and onwards, when we have more and better comparison on the real growth ex-COVID. I think that what the market will turn on to and focus on going forward.
And putting this a bit in perspective, so we had a really low 10-year US Treasury this summer, right after the breakout of COVID. It was down at 0.5%, and it was a pretty steep increase that kind of caught real momentum in the beginning of this year, when it went from 1% to yesterday's highest 1.75. So do you think it's the absolute number or more of the fast increase that is worrying the market?
I definitely think it's the speed. And listening to the Fed, and they are guessing that inflation will be right 2.4 this year, 2% next year. I think still that the interest rates could move upwards a little bit more. But with that said, I think the speed is the important thing, and the speed will come down. I think what we've seen in the beginning of this year has been once in a lifetime speed of interest rate increase in percentage points, because we were at such a low level.
So there's also been a lot of talk about Apple's new policy, how to share data between apps. And you had some news from China there with a really interesting thing that I haven't heard about before. And it's a new 4-letter combination.
Yeah, no, I've been listening to so many podcasts and so many conference calls in the last few days about EDFA and effects, and the rumor it's going to be delayed again and so on. But now there's a new thing coming out from China called CAID, which is really coming from a state organization or state-sponsored organization in China, which is the China Advertising Association. And it's really all the apps in China joining together, TikTok, the ByteDance and Tencent and all of them. And thereby, if you have a number of ads together, you can start tracking people outside the Apple, so to say, tracking system. And that means that they would violate the Apple, so to say, agreement. And now it's going to really interesting to see how Apple will respond. They are stating in China that they won't track individual users. So they will track them, but they won't get the private data on them. But it will be really interesting to see what Apple will do. I heard rumors yesterday that they have kicked out one app already using this system. So this will be really interesting to see. China is such an important market for the App Store. So we need to follow this very closely and what's going to happen in China, and the Apple response to if people will start using this type of service.
Interesting. And let's move over to Airbnb, which we looked a bit more in depth into this week. It's a really interesting platform. It's the market leader in alternative accommodation, as it's called in the lingo. They have a really large inventory of over 4 million hosts globally, mostly outside of the US actually. So they've really spread a lot from their beginning there. What is interesting is that it's IPO'd last year. It's up over 200% from the IPO price, but from the first closing, it's up 35 to 40%. It's a pretty hefty valuation, 25 times sales. And what could be kind of a risk is the number one player in the accommodation space, not the biggest in alternative, but if you include hotels, etc., and that's bookings. Why do you think they are both a stock but also a player to count in there, Inge?
I think first thing is that the fact that they have 6 million homes registered in alternatives and Airbnb has 5.6. But as you said, everybody think about Airbnb when we think alternatives. That's really the core case. But Bookings has a bigger stock on it. And more importantly, they also have a massive marketing budget, which is 3 to almost 4 times Airbnb, which means they can move around, they can work on the subject if they want to become even bigger on it. They don't break down the revenue of it, so we can't compare it apples to apples to Airbnb, but Bookings is clearly a much bigger company. And also interesting thing is that their merchant business, meaning getting money for the payments and so on, is also making quite a lot of money for them and margin. But what we really got out of comparing these two is the leverage of the business. Yes, Airbnb is bigger on alternatives in the US, where we already saw a turnaround in Q4 and strength in Q1. So Airbnb is turning around a little bit quicker than Bookings.com. But the interesting thing is that the leverage in the business of Bookings is much, much, much higher, which means I think it's really, really interesting if you believe that traveling will start to pick up again, which we definitely believe. Then the level of it will be hard to say. So I think it's definitely worth looking at Bookings versus Airbnb. And the valuation, as you said, it's completely different.
So conclusion on Airbnb, really interesting platform, price compared to Bookings right now a bit expensive. Let's move over to some product news from Google. So YouTube yesterday announced that they are launching the TikTok competitor YouTube Shorts in the US. It has been beta tested in India, which is interesting because that's the market where TikTok got banned, and it was over 200 million people using TikTok. So it's a good market for Google to start. But I think the most interesting with this is that Facebook launched their product called Instagram Reels in August last year. So it took Google almost 7 months to come up with a similar product, which really emphasized the speed and the execution within Facebook. And let's remember when they launched stories as comparable to Snapchat stories. So Facebook is really getting it done. Any comments on this, Inge?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Facebook is very, very fast. And I think a lot of people miss that Facebook are a very, very fast moving company when it comes to their area of play field. And also if you look at VR and AR and so on, they are very, very fast in moving. So it's quite impressive how Facebook moves.
Mark Zuckerberg said yesterday that 20% of the staff within Facebook works within VR and AR, so it's really an area that they put a lot of energy within. Great,
yeah, I think. And I also saw some rumor yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. This wearable thing that's coming out in 2 years, like a watch that reads everything you do in terms of movement. So that's a lot of interesting stuff coming out from Facebook.
I saw that as well. I'll promise that we will show a video in next week's Tech Thoughts. But that's it for today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.